Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth computer course video for Tilehurst Methodist Church. This video is all about email. So we'll start off by talking a little bit about what email is, and it's really just electronic mail. The idea was to mirror the idea of sending letters to people and maybe sending extra things with those letters. So that's where, when we talk about an email address, that's very much meant to match a home address, for example, where you would send a normal letter to. There are lots of different ways of getting at email, and that partly depends on what I'll call your email provider. So the company that is hosting your email, it's very easy to get into jargon with this, but storing your email for you, letting you access it, and that's the second part of anyone's email address. So I'm going to be demonstrating with Gmail, which is Google Mail. So in this case, Google is hosting my email, allowing me to get at it, etc. Other email addresses you might see: hotmail.com or outlook.com, live.com, btinternet.com, etc. Those are all your internet email hosting providers. And then there are different ways of then accessing the email. I'm going to be showing you something using a web browser to access email. Just got rid of the bookmarks because you don't need to see those. Other people may want to use something like Thunderbird, which downloads your email onto your local computer. And of course, if you've got a mobile phone, that may well have email built into it as well. Because there are lots of different programs and different, even if you're accessing email via a web browser, different email providers will have slightly different interfaces for this. So when you're writing email, you won't see exactly what I've got here that is what Gmail shows, unless you happen to be using Gmail and using it via a browser. You'll get a very slightly different experience if you use Gmail from a phone, for example. The ideas are basically the same though, so hopefully it will all map and you can take what I'm saying and what I'm showing you and think, okay, well, I know how I would do that on my email client or however I'm getting at it. If you don't know how to do something, if there's one particular aspect that you haven't done before, then play around a bit, see if you can find it out, and if not, you can always ask me in person. So the first thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to email is email addresses. So you may well have, I'm sure you've seen these before, something like in this case, and I've got two different email addresses that I've set up just for this video, so that I don't have to show you my real email, which would reveal other people's email addresses that are private, basically. So here is an example of an email address, and in case that's not terribly clear, let me just close everything in Notepad and so that I can zoom in a bit. This is showing course demo, johndemo@outlook.com. So within this email address, there are two parts. There's the display name and the actual email address itself. And I know it's a bit confusing to think about an email address within the email address, but this is the important part. So I like to think of this as a bit like the thing that you put at the top of an envelope when you're writing to someone. So I won't use my actual address here because this is going out on the internet, but if someone wrote to me, they might write to John Skeet, 123 Fictional Road, Reading, RG 111 2BC. Okay, that's clearly not a real address. But the display name part, this course demo, that corresponds to what you're putting, who you say you're writing to, and the other part is the address. And that's what the post office and the Royal Mail will use to work out where to deliver something to. So this part, 123 Fictional Road, corresponds to that johndemo@outlook.com. So just as if someone wanted to be mean and wrote Mr. Blobby and then 123 Fictional Road, they could send me a real world snail mail envelope to that. It would still reach me. I might wonder why it said Mr. Blobby on the top, but it would definitely reach me. In the same way, I could send an email to Mr. Blobby, johndemo@outlook.com, and that would still reach the same email address. So I know we had huge problems a while ago, or huge confusion within the stewards at Tilehurst, where someone had originally written Steward 6, stewards at Tilehurst Methodist, and they had happened to use Steward 6 as a display name. And for ages, people were saying, oh, should I send it to the steward's email or Steward 6? It's like, it's exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter at all. Only this bit matters. I'd also say that for at least the vast majority, I don't think it's actually required, but the email address itself is what's called case insensitive. It doesn't matter if you use lowercase letters or uppercase letters. So you could write johndemo@outlook.com, for example. That won't make any difference at all. There are a few special features with Gmail addresses, which I will mention later on, but in a Gmail specific bit. But almost all providers, as far as I'm aware, actually all providers will be case insensitive. So it doesn't matter. You never need to tell people, oh, capital B, capital D, etc., for the email address. Just make sure that they've got it in terms of the right letters and numbers. So once you understand what an email address is, let me just minimize that so we can bring it back later on if necessary. How are you going to use them? We can see we've got an email here that has been sent to tmccomputercourse@gmail.com from course demo, johndemo@outlook.com. And if I wanted to send a new email back to TMC Computer Course, I could do compose, and then we get the new message box down here. Now, by default in Gmail, it's showing me 2, and I can write, in fact, if I write course demo, it will possibly, no, it hasn't auto-completed it. It's because this is me, but if I write johndemo@outlook.com, there we go. So that is the email address that this email has come from, and I can put, this is a message with John Demo in the to line. So by default you can see the to, but there are other bits here, CC and BCC. Now most of the time, if you're just emailing one person, you would just use to. That's fine. If you're wanting to write something that's primarily for one person, but you want to just make sure that someone else sees it as well, you can use CC, which stands for carbon copy. And this is something that my kids will probably never have seen a carbon copy of anything before. But if you remember that you used to get sheets of carbon copy with either 2 or 3 sheets where you write on one, write on the top and give that to the relevant person, but you keep a copy that looks the same in sort of lower grade because it's come through with the ink on the lower level. That's a carbon copy. Well, the same idea is for email, that someone else gets exactly the same thing. So I could CC my main email address, skeet@pobox.com, and both the John Demo account and my normal account will get a copy of that email, and both of us would be able to see that the other person got it as well. Different email clients may highlight things differently. So if I do send an email, or if I receive an email that I'm only CC'd on, it might look slightly different to sort of say, this isn't quite as important, you're not expected to reply to this, etc., etc. But it's only a sort of stylistic difference. there's no really big difference between to and CC. Whereas BCC is really significantly different. So if I BCC skeet@pobox.com, BCC stands for blind carbon copy. And the idea is then anyone receiving the email will still see whoever's on the to and the CC line, but they may not, they won't see whoever is on the BCC line. So both johndemo@outlook.com and my skeet@pobox.com account will get this. John Demo won't know that it's gone to anyone else at all. The skeet@pobox.com account will be able to see that it went to John Demo, but not, I could infer that I was BCC'd, but if there were other people, if I use stewards@tilehurstmethodist.org.uk, for example, we wouldn't be able to see that each other were BCC'd. And the main reason for doing this, there are two reasons for BCCing someone. One is so that people can't see the email address. So an email address is private. You generally don't want to share it with anyone else unless you've got permission to do so. So if you're sending something to 10 different people and they don't know each other, it is polite to use BCC instead, so that you're not giving out other people's private details. The other reason is so that they don't all reply to each other. And I'll talk about reply and reply all and forward in a second. But generally, if people don't need to know that each other have seen the email and don't need to get replies, or you just want to avoid people seeing each other's email addresses, that's when you would use BCC, so blind carbon copy. But everyone on the to line and the CC line and the BCC line should all end up getting a copy of the message. So that's if you're sending things. The next thing I want to talk about is the different bits of a message, an email. So an email has a subject line, which in this case is "this is a sample email," and what's called a body. I don't know where the terminology for body came, but it's very common in computing. We talk about headers and body, and it's usually the main part of something. There's also potentially attachments, and I'll talk about attachments in a little bit. So when you are sending an email, you say who you want it to go to with the to, CC and BCC as we've talked about before. Then you put "this is a subject," and then whatever you want in the body. This is the body. The subject should be reasonably, when you're thinking about what subject to write, think about people will be seeing this in a list of other emails. So ideally, make it something that is not too long. You don't want it to be, a whole paragraph, but reasonably clear and specific. So as a really concrete example, bear in mind that people will see the subject when they read their email when they first get it, but they may well later on be searching for something. So if I send out minutes of a meeting, I will put out something like "minutes of leadership meeting July 16th, 2024, or I might write that as 24/07/16 for reasons I won't go into, or I might even put both so that it's easy to find. But in particular, that subject line shows it's got the minutes. It's the leadership meeting because I may well have several meetings with similar sets of people, so I want to make sure that if someone is searching for the leadership meeting minutes, they can find that easily. And the date, because if I just see 20 different emails all called "minutes of leadership meeting," well, I've then got to go and see when it was sent in order to work out what it is. So think about trying to get as much useful information in that subject line as you can sensibly. And then in the body, you can put whatever you want, and with Gmail, with most email clients these days, you can use the formatting options down here to say, well, I now want to write something in italics, and then I'll write something in bold, and hopefully everyone will see that in italics and in bold. It's possible that they'll only see what's called a plain text version, where the formatting is lost, but most people these days will be able to see the formatted body. So that's the subject and body, and a little bit about how you might think. And I would encourage you to think carefully about the subject lines of emails that you send. And please always do put a subject line. Sometimes you will receive an email with no subject, and when that appears in a list, or if you try to look for it later on, you have no idea what's in it. So always think about the subject line for your emails. Let's talk about forwarding and replying emails. In Gmail, there is this little box. I'm actually going to just make the window a bit smaller, because up in the top right hand corner you can probably see, I hope, if things are working properly, you can see my face, and I want to make sure you can see all of the bits here. So here is the reply button in Gmail, and again, this will vary with different email providers. If you're using Outlook.com, it might look slightly different. If you're using Thunderbird on your computer, it'll look different again. But usually if you hover over an icon with your, when I say hover, I mean move the mouse pointer over a button and leave it there, and there should be a little what's called tooltip comes up, in this case saying reply. And there are 3 dots there, and 3 dots, as hopefully we're starting to get the idea of in this course, always means, well, there are some more options available. So here I've got reply, forward, filter things. There's lots of different options, and some of those will also be in these 3 dots up here. Not everything, they're slightly different, but that's more options in both cases. So we can reply to an email, and that usually goes, just reply will be sent back to whoever sent the email to start with, on the to line, and normally, and I should be able to see the subject line, the subject line now is the original subject line with RE : as in regarding. And please, when you're replying to an email, unless it really is changing the topic completely, keep the original subject line, because lots of email clients, including Gmail, use the subject line to gather a set of emails together and say, right, this is one email chain, email thread, and you can see all the original email and all the replies all in one sort of list. So you'll have seen there was a little break while I sent another few emails. I wanted to demonstrate a couple of different things. Firstly, the purpose of keeping the subject line the same within one set of emails. Gmail has noticed that when I replied, I didn't change the subject line, and when the johndemo@outlook.com account replied to that, again, we didn't change the subject line. So we've got 3 emails, and we can see all of them, click through, collapse things if we want to, but you can get the idea of several emails all in one place. Some email clients don't have this, and if you get 10 different emails from lots of people, if you're trying to arrange a group activity and people have replied all over the place, you may have to see those mixed up with other emails about completely different things. But Gmail is very good at what's called threading, so keeping all the emails for one email chain together. So that's why we keep the subject line the same, so that Gmail can keep track of that, and other email providers. But when I replied, this was a one person to one person email. There are different options if things have gone to multiple people. So here I've sent a new email called "This is an email to multiple people" that we can see has been sent to TMC Computer Course and skeet@pobox.com. So now, if I want to reply to this email, I can choose between reply, which only goes to the person who sent it, so just johndemo@outlook.com, Or I can use the little drop down here to say reply all, and reply all sends it to everyone that was originally received the email out of the to and CC lines. So if someone has been sent this, it's possible that this email was sent to more people and I don't know it because those people were on the BCC line. Even if you do a reply all, it won't go to people who originally received it via BCC. And that can be a very good thing. If I'm organising things, worship stewards for Tilehurst, for example, I will often send an email just BCC, worship stewards, duty stewards, whatever it is, so that I can get responses back to me without some people replying to everyone saying, yes, I'm available for that date. Well, person A doesn't need to know necessarily that person B is available on that date. So if I've used BCC, it stops the possibility of lots of people replying and getting each other's replies and things. But that's the difference between reply and reply all. And I would say, just like that, the reason for BCC is so that people don't see each other's email addresses, and so that reply to everyone doesn't go to everyone, doesn't go to those BCC'd people. Please be careful when you're replying in both directions. So think about who you want to see this email. Look at who received it to start with, as far as you can see, and think, how many people need to see my reply? If only the person who sent it needs to see the reply, then only reply to them. If everyone does, for example, suppose Helen, our minister, was saying, could someone set up the chairs before next Sunday morning service? Well, if I reply to Helen, but don't reply to the other people, and I say, yes, I can do that, then no one else will know that I've already said I can do it. So they may still want to be checking their calendar and see whether they can do it. So it's useful for them to see that I can. If, on the other hand, I'm saying, sorry, I can't do that, I've got something else going on, then probably no one else needs to know that, so I should just send that to Helen. So think about who needs to see this reply and try to avoid bombarding people with more emails than they really need to get. So that's reply and reply all. There's another option, which is forward, and this is usually you forward an email to someone who didn't get it originally. That's the point of it. So I could forward this to stewards at tilehurstmethodist.org.uk saying, I think you should all see this. And you can see it's got forwarded message by default. It shows who it came from, who got it, and this would usually have, if we go to edit subject, you'll see this will have a FWD subject line. And again, Gmail knows about FWD and RE and things, so when it's matching subject lines, but that's to just show this is a forwarded email. It's just a little convention, and you get all the details in there. Now, importantly, if someone has sent an attachment, if you forward an email with an attachment, that will usually forward the attachment as well. So if you want someone to get an attachment, you normally want to forward it, whereas if you just reply, they won't. Let's have a look at that. I've got an email with an attachment here. So this has a sanctuary service. If I just reply to that, and I can change who receives that. So if I change that to John Demo, so this is supposedly a reply, but I've changed who that reply is going to. So you might be tempted to use this as a way of sending someone else an email that you think they'll be interested in. But you can see, hopefully, there's no attachment anymore. Because normally when you're replying to someone, you don't want to send them back the thing that they sent you beforehand. Whereas if you're forwarding, if I go the 3 dots and then forward, if I forward this to johndoe@outlook.com, you'll see it still has the attachment there. So forwarding, usually for someone who hasn't received the original email, and forwarding does forward the attachments, any attachments that came on the original email as well. Okay, final thing I think about replies is inline versus not inline. I don't know of a better way of describing it. Email replies. So this original sample email has a couple of different aspects to it, different paragraphs. It's saying this email is going to be used in the computer course video. Hope that's okay. And what do you think of the course so far? So if we reply to this, we could just say, yes, that's fine. Course is going well. Try not to waffle too much. And I apologize for some of these pop-ups that are coming up. This is just because I've created this email account specifically for this course, so it's going through a sort of first-time experience. So if I reply in this particular way, I've just typed in my reply, and if you show the dots, this is what course demo will receive, just the new bit at the top, and then everything they sent below it. So that's option 1. A sort of variant of option 1 is if I again hit reply and say, yes, that's fine. I've removed your original email because it was boring. And again, I can go through these bits and I can edit whatever. This isn't limited to what they actually said, but I could just get rid of all of it. John. So now when course demo sees the reply, they won't see any of their original email, and maybe that's fine. Certainly by the time you've got sort of 20 different bits and pieces, a very long email chain, sometimes it can be really useful to trim things. So that's sort of a variant of option 1. Option 2, what I call inline replying, is where you immediately show the trimmed content and start editing things. And you put the result that you put your responses in the email just below the bit you're replying to. So in particular here, I don't care about this high computer course watchers. I try to trim emails down as much as possible. So I've selected some text there and I'm just going to hit backspace. And then if I go to the end of line here and press return twice or 3 times, I can say, yes, that's fine. We won't show any sensitive email addresses. And then I can do a bit more trimming. I don't need to say that I'm replying to John because they know their own name. Yes, it's useful. Sometimes there are some irrelevant bits. And now when someone gets that email, when course demo gets that email, they can see which of my replies is to which particular bit of the email. So it takes a little bit longer to reply in line. And if there's no ambiguity anyway, then I would generally do the reply at the top saying, yep, that's fine, whatever it is. In particular, if you're trying to arrange things, it can be really useful if you're trying to arrange multiple things in particular. It can be really useful to reply in line, because if someone's trying to do 3 different dates and 2 different time slots, then saying, yes, we'll have our introductory meeting on Tuesday at 10 a.m. and then quote the next bit saying the follow-up meeting will be at whatever. It's like, yes, that's fine. And in particular, if you're agreeing with some bits and disagreeing with other bits, then using this inline type of reply can be really useful for that. So it just adds a bit of clarity, and hopefully you may well have seen this before but not known how to do it. So I'm going to run you through that one more time, but just be aware of when it can be really useful to do, when you're replying to multiple things and it could be confusing if you just put all of your replies in one section. So I'm just going to discard this draft. The bin here says, I don't want to send that after all. So I hit reply. I hit the 3 dots to say show everything. And again, this will be different in different email clients, but hopefully similar enough. I then trim the bits that I don't want. I'll start off this time by trimming everything I'm not going to want. And then if I just hit return, in this case I've left a bit of blank line. I would personally normally trim that, but it's not going to be a problem. So reply to first part, and then I'm just using the arrow keys to move around here. You can use the mouse as well. Yes, it's useful. So hopefully you've now got the idea of how you can reply, whether you reply to all or reply to just one person, how you forward emails. That's most of what dealing with email is. Just briefly, if you want to send an attachment, so I showed before, let's go back to my inbox. Oh, the email I want to see isn't in my inbox, so I will search for it. So I happen to know that it's got an attachment, so I will search, I happen to know that it uses the word attachment in it, so I'll search for that. Here's email with an attachment. And now I can download that, which will show up in Chrome here, and then I could click on that and it would open the PDF. You will probably have your client configured, and you may not know you've set this up, but it will be configured to save attachments in a particular place. If you're using a web browser, it would probably be in your downloads folder. If you're using a different client, it may use the downloads folder, it may use somewhere entirely different. But if we wanted to send an attachment, so let's send an attachment to John Demo and call it, this is the Sanctuary service from July 4th. And now I'm going to use the little paperclip down here, and usually attachments will use a paperclip icon across different clients. It may be slightly different in some places, but if there is a paperclip, that probably means attachment. And then it will bring up some sort of file explorer, and so I will just attach that. It's uploaded. You can see the attachment is there. The little X would remove the attachment if you think, oh no, I've attached the wrong version. I meant to attach that version. That's fine. And then you this is some text in the body of the email. Sometimes it's fine to just send an attachment with a subject line and no text describing it, but usually if you think about what the person receiving it is going to want to know, if they don't have any context, it can be a bit confusing. You may be remembering, oh well, we had a meeting 2 months ago and I said I was going to send you this detail. Well, if you've been going through your list of chores, you may remember that. The person receiving it might not. So if you say, this is from our meeting back in May, where I said I would send you the details of blah, 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 whatever it is. So give a bit of context in the body. And that's how you would send an attachment. So just as a reminder of some of the conventions of being polite when emailing and adding one or two other bits. Don't share email addresses with people unless the person whose email address it is has given you consent to do so. You can use BCC to include multiple people and they won't see each other's email addresses. Think before you use reply or reply all. I'm not saying never use reply all, and I'm not saying never use reply without reply all, but just think about who ought to see this reply. If you imagine there's a cost associated, that we all get email for free, but there is a time cost to receiving emails that you don't really need. So just be considerate about who you're sending things to. If you want to forward something, that will come with the attachments by default, whereas replying won't. And even before you reply at all, think, do I really need to reply? If you are just going to say thanks, or well done, or whatever it is, sometimes that will be really crucial. If you're sending someone confirmation of plane tickets or something like that, and you really need to know that it's got through, then it's helpful if they reply saying, thanks, got it. But if you're sending something out saying, I'm happy to announce, some great thing, a reply just saying, well done, or glad to hear it, probably doesn't add anything to that person's day. And if they get 20 different people replying like that, it can be kind of annoying. So think about whether you really need to reply. That also goes for, just like it can be hard to put the phone down if everyone's saying goodbye, well, I don't want to be the one to put the phone down. It can sometimes be hard to be the last person, or the person who doesn't reply on an email chain. But if you are just kind of acknowledging, yes, I got it, and you don't really need to know whether I got it or not, if you reply just in case, then they might reply just in case, and you'll go back and forth forever and end up wasting time. So just think about, do I need to reply? I said I would talk about a few interesting aspects that are specific to Gmail. So everything I've covered so far is really, even though I've demonstrated it with Gmail, it's all applies to email in general. There are a few interesting Gmail specific aspects that are worth knowing about. So let's start off with email addresses. My email address, you'll have seen skeet@pobox.com, but I'm also jonathan.skeet@gmail.com. And I will show you several different email addresses that would actually still get to me. Firstly, any symbols, or certainly dots, and I think dashes and underscores, are ignored. So if I put lots of them in, and I already said it's case insensitive, that will still reach my email account. So you don't need to worry about getting dots correct for Gmail email addresses. Other providers may well make match specifically on dots, so you might have to get it right for other people. But you usually don't need to. There's no benefit in not putting the dots where people have otherwise put them. But one aspect that's really useful if you're signing up for a newsletter or something, and you don't actually want to see it all the time, you want to be able to filter it easily, etc. Anything you put after a plus for Gmail is ignored. So if I send something to jonathan.skeet+ignored@gmail.com, that will still get to jonathan.skeet@gmail.com. But I would still be able to see that it had the plus ignored, or plus, John Lewis. So I might sign up for a John Lewis newsletter and sign up with this email address, and then I can easily find anything that has come from, well, either from John Lewis, or I'd be able to see if John Lewis had shared my email address with someone else, because it would still have, and I'm in no way accusing the John Lewis company of doing this. This was just an example, but I would still be able to see that, and I could do filtering on it and other complicated things. So it can be really useful to know that you can give slightly different email addresses to people and still tell later on what's happened with them. The other thing that's somewhat Gmail specific is the idea of archiving. Now, other email clients will have the idea of folders. In Gmail, we have labels. So let's create a label of course stuff, and I can apply a label to a given email. And then when I look in course stuff, I can see it, but I can see this is also still in my inbox. So if I go to inbox, it will show everything with the inbox label. Typically, I don't put a specific label on anything, but when I'm done with an email, I will archive it, which is this icon up here. And archiving doesn't delete the email, but it removes the inbox label. So it no longer shows when I click on inbox. So I might do that for both things. I like to have an empty inbox. This whole primary promotions and social thing is something I don't particularly use myself with Gmail. So my personal email doesn't show primary promotions and social at all. I just get it all in my inbox. But I like to try to keep my inbox empty. But that doesn't mean I've deleted anything. And I would encourage you, if you are using Gmail, not to delete stuff unless you find that you're running out of space. So you can see here I've used 0 gigabytes out of 15 gigabytes. If that's getting to 13 or 14, I would start looking for large emails in terms of attachments and things. But otherwise, just let it all accumulate. And if you want to find something, if I search for antelopes, I happen to know that I've got an email that contains antelopes. I can find it. Or if I want to look at all my mail, I can just go to all mail here. And then I can see everything. You can tell this is a new account. I've only got 5 emails. On my real email, this would show hundreds of thousands. So that's archiving instead of deleting. If you do want to delete something, if this were an enormous PDF and was taking up a lot of space, I can always delete it. It then doesn't immediately get deleted. It goes into trash, and then, as it says here, messages that have been in trash for more than 30 days will be automatically deleted, and you can delete it explicitly when you want to. But given that you never know when you might want to look at something again, I just archive all email and then delete things to clean up if I really, really need to. The final Gmail specific feature that I'll talk about is something called snoozing. I use this all the time. So suppose I'm going to send myself an email, which is a useful thing to be able to do. I often use emailing myself as a quick way of reminding myself to do something. So I'm going to say on Tuesday afternoon, lead the next course session. So I'm recording this on Monday morning, but I want to remember to lead the next session tomorrow afternoon. Now, in reality, of course, I would use a calendar entry, but there are various times where you want to be reminded of something. So now if I go to my inbox, I've got the email from me, and it says me. But I'm not actually interested in that for the rest of today, because it's only Monday. I need to know, maybe I want to be reminded about that at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So I go to the 3 dots and choose snooze, and none of the suggested ones quite match. So I will pick a date and time, pick Tuesday, and I'll say 10 a.m, save, and that conversation has been snoozed. So it's gone from my inbox, it's been archived, but it will magically pop up again in my inbox at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. And you can always look at what you've got snoozed, and you can see it's going to be unsnoozed on July the 9th. You can see what will be what will come back, and you can always go into it. You can unsnooze it immediately, see when it's snoozed until, etc. So in order to mostly have an empty inbox, I use snooze a lot. So I've always got sort of 10 or 15 things that are going to pop up. Sometimes during the week, I'll often snooze things until the weekend. If I've got work-related stuff that comes into my personal account, I will often snooze that until Monday morning. And sometimes if I've got theatre tickets or something, I will snooze until the day that I'm going to the theatre, which might be months in advance. And it just means I don't need to be bothered by any of it until the right time. So snoozing is a really good Gmail feature. So that's covered an awful lot in today's session. I hope it's useful to you, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.